following is a show that we did back in November of 2010, talking about how we train our tenants on how we run our business. It's very important that they're very clear on how you run your business, from your policies on collecting late fees, to your policies on lease renewal, and just everything that involves them living in your property. We discuss the importance of keeping everything consistent for each tenant. We have several people that work from us, so it's very important that we keep everything's consistent, that we treat everyone the same. It is my ambition to have all of our podcasts up on YouTube. We stream live on Ustream, and I'm uploading them on YouTube, trying to get everything uploaded from the past several months up on YouTube. But we do stream live on Ustream. We plan on having a call-in feature on our show for real estate investors and tenants to call in and ask questions of us and kind of get some dialogue going. So that's it. Here's our show, and be sure to check us out on our forums and check our schedule out on our website, landlordsjournal.com. Thank you.
Welcome to landlordsjournal.com. On this day, November the 7th, 2010. We have a new setup. If you've joined us previously, we are trying things technologically a little bit different today with a new camera, new microphone. So hopefully that will help us work out some of the kinks that we've been experiencing up until now. So that's why it might look a little bit different and sound a little bit different, hopefully better to you guys. So we again have a topic to discuss, and it's called training tenants, but it's more like how do we work with tenants to facilitate facilitate positive communication back and forth and get them to do what we need to do, and also how we fulfill our obligations to them, at the same time. And it's just making sure that communication flows well in both directions. But training tenants is kind of a catchy thing. So I believe, John, did you have a starting point for us? Because I know you were breaking it down earlier. You had several subcategories.
Yeah, I wanted to.
What's our first?
I wanted to talk about, I wanted to talk about strategies on how you run your business, how you you train your tenants, and how you run your business. Mm-hmm. How to get them to pay their rent on time. Mm-hmm. Strategies to pay their rent on time. I wanted to discuss strategies on how to collect their money, get their money on time, and why it's important, and then why it's important to. Each one of us will have different opinions, but why it's important to collect late fees, or why do you feel it's not necessary? How some people can get by with it, some people can't, based on their tenure at the property or whatever. Mm-hmm. But first, I wanted to talk about strategies, kind of brainstorm and discuss strategies on how to collect your rent on time and why it's important. And each one of us will have different viewpoints on that, but are you coming over here, Bob? Are you going to join us, or?
I'm kind of thinking I should be the producer.
He's the producer.
The producer.
Director, producer. Well, I'll get started, and I'm sure everybody's we're all very opinionated here, so everybody will jump in if they want. I think it's interesting that we've both been landlords, but we've also been tenants at some point, in our lives.
Right.
And I think we've lived in a combination of some really nice places, and we've lived in some maybe not so nice places, because you're like that growing up. You start off kind of low and move up. At least I did. The first place I had was not very well, but the last place I rented was very nice. And I lived in a higher end apartment complex, and the mortgage, I'm sure, for that place was huge. And just like with our places, I mean, I'm not sure a lot of times tenants realize that their rent actually, a lot of it goes toward paying the mortgage and paying for that building. You know, most buildings are not paid off. People don't have that kind of cash usually off the bat, so they have to put some money out to every month, you know, just like you pay your house payment. So without that income coming in, without that cash flow, you know, on a consistent basis, that's going to put you, the landlord, in a world of hurt. So if I've got a person owing me $500 and I have to make a $200 payment, you know, and they're a week late, 2 weeks late, well, that mortgage company's not going to understand. I have to make my payment regardless of what the tenant does. And so that tenant needs to know that I have to make that payment or else I'm in trouble, my neck's on the line. And therefore, not to jump ahead, but I think maybe some penalties or you know, whether it be warning or late fees or, you know, just even some places would evict you, you know, after so many days of not paying your rent, you know, which seems extreme, but, you know, what do you do? As a landlord, you have to protect your neck. You have to save yourself. So I think that's kind of my general view on that. Anybody else?
Yeah, it's you want to incentivize good behavior, but you also want to punish bad behavior. Here we go, shaking.
It's not a train coming through or anything like that.
Something you did just got better.
Yeah, it stabilized it. It's a learning process here with the camera, folks, so just bear with us.
There's some landlords who, you know, a person, actually a woman that I'm trying to steal from a fellow landlord into one of our units, you know, and she said that one of the reasons that she wanted to move, not only because he was selling the building, which that's a whole other topic, but not only because he was selling the building, but because he charged her excessive late fees. And she was paying, I think her rent is actually $600 a month, but she ends up paying $700 a month because of late fees and, you know, all the fees that he tacks on to her. And he's been there 2 years. So there's a point where, you know, are you penalizing a good tenant for being a few days late, and then they end up leaving because they're not happy, or do you reward that? You know, it's a fine line. It's a fine line. I mean, if she feels that she's not being fair, you know, treated fairly, but he's collecting an extra $100 in fees, but he might be out in the long term because he's running off a good tenant. Because as we know, anybody that's been there 2 years is a good tenant.
It's a fine line.
So it's a fine line. You know, does he keep on tacking on the late fees and, you know, and take the chance of running her off? You know, where do you draw the line? Do you give him like a 5-day grace period, a 10-day grace period? Do you focus on rewards instead of punishments? You know, do you say, okay, if you get your rent on time, you get a discount, your rent will start declining instead of increasing? I mean, where do you draw that? Where do you draw the line? I mean, because we've had, and it's hard to enforce late fees for one. I mean, we've had a hard time. Well, sometimes you just got to do it. You just have to say you got to pay this or what. But if they don't pay it, what do you do? Throw them out? I mean, what do you do? I mean, you throw away it's like Bob says, throwing the baby away with the bathwater. I mean, what do you do? I mean,
I'm sorry, I've already spoken. Go ahead.
It reminds me. It takes me back to this late fee to a book that all of us enjoyed and we listened to on our trip to Rehoboth a couple of years ago, Freakonomics,
right.
Where there was it's a great book it's a very enjoyable book if anybody, and I would suggest the audio book copy. The authors read it, but what I was getting to was the guy did a topic on he was talking about incentives most of the book is on incentives, but he had an illustration of a daycare center that had a problem with people picking up their children late, which was kind of analogous to what we're talking about, a timely obligation, and how do you get somebody to meet a timely obligation. And this daycare center instituted a late fee, and suddenly the incidence of late arrivals of parents went up instead of down, because people knew that they saw it sort of as a fee, not a punishment, but instead of feeling guilty about leaving their child and feeling guilty about not paying on time, they saw it as a fee that it's a user fee sort of a thing, and I wonder if they said that if you charge too much of a fee, then people will drop the service, or or so. I could see where if you charge too much of if somebody's late and you charge them a late fee, they might just give up on paying rent altogether.
Right.
Right.
That's the fine line. It's the fine line that
if it's too stiff.
It's too stiff.
If it's too stiff and they're already in trouble, they may just give up altogether, rather than coming and talking to you and trying to work out an arrangement.
But if it's not enough, that gives them the capability of postponing it, like I was saying before.
$25, yeah, it's like, well, I'll pay,
Yeah.
instead of paying on the 1st, I'll pay on the 30th, and it's going to be an extra $25.
Right,
Yeah,
which I think
thank
is not
goodness I
enough.
can do that.
You know.
But then that goes back to me, because my mortgage for that building is still due the 1st of the month, not the 30th.
The tenants don't care about that.
Tenants, that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying, the tenants don't care
They
about
think
that.
they're made out of
So
money.
that's not...
Well, even still, it doesn't make me feel bad that my rent that goes into the ether that will never be used again will go into somebody's savings account, because that's what a mortgage is a savings account that they're putting money in your pocket. So I realize everybody tenants look at it that way. I used to think, I used to say, hey, I got a mortgage to pay, and I would use that. That never, ever, ever, ever worked. That was, not only did it not work, I think it was counterproductive to telling people that I had a mortgage that I had to pay. It ended up being rather than productive toward getting.
Yeah,
them
I
to pay
used
their
to
rent.
say that. I used to say that at the apartment building when we first purchased the apartment building, and they don't care. They're not on the same playing field as you. They don't. A lot of them don't even know what a mortgage.
Well, even if they do, I think the ones that really, I think the people that understood it were people that had owned homes, and that didn't help them. That didn't make them.
Urgency was not there.
It didn't exactly. It didn't. That's not. It didn't help any. I'm not. I found it to be counterproductive to mention that in dealing with trying to collect rent.
And we need to start enforcing the late fee deal. But like you said, there's a fine
Do
line.
we? I mean, are we debating it here?
Or do we encourage them to pay it on time? There's like a two school of thought to it. Like if they pay, if it's a $50 late fee after 2 weeks, they could just say, well, it's just the cost of doing business, and they're going to just
They'll delay it.
They're going to delay
They'll
it.
delay it as much.
So do you reward them getting it in on time? Do you have like if they
a discount?
This is kind of like what I had thought in visiting on some of the units. Say like we have a couple people that pay it like clockwork on the 1st. They're there. That's it. They've done it for their entire tenure at our building, and that's it. Mm-hmm. Do we say, okay, since you paid your rent on time, and the whole thing too, when you have several properties like we do, the word gets out. Word gets out how you run business. So people talk. We have a lot of our units are close together. We have like bundles together. So they're gonna, if they say, oh, they decreased my rent after me paying on time for a year, someone's going to be more inclined to do that, because they're going to know what's happened. So what I'm saying is, after the first after they've been there like a year and a half, and they've paid on time, and you're pleased, and they haven't torn up the place, and you haven't put a lot of money into it. Actually, I'm not saying we do this. I'm not saying that I would do this, but you actually decrease the rent.
Well, let me tell you what happens. My employer has found through a lot of research. We have the same issue with incentives for attendance. And what happens is you give them that out once you have. I'm speaking from over here.
Yeah.
That's
we can't see your body language.
That's the producer.
Which is part of the.
What happens is once somebody misses that threshold, then all the incentive is gone. You lose it completely because of somebody being on vacation or whatever the reason is. I think those long-term things, I think they're not good incentives. Because what can happen is a mistake, an honest mistake early on throws you off.
And you've
And
lost it already.
you know you've already lost it, and there's no way to get it back. And it's I don't think it's much of an incentive.
Well, let me throw out this idea since we're just brainstorming, and you may think this is crazy. What if we did a penalty and an incentive at the same time? In that we figure out a good incentive if they pay on the first of the month. However, subsequent days after that, $5, $10 a day, whatever. So if they don't pay on time, not only do they not get the incentive, but they are also charged a late fee on top of that. So it might be seen as a double whammy. And your incentive could be something that something's very useful. If I had an incentive, I'd want it to be useful for me. I don't want somebody to give me a gift card to Bath and Body Works or something. I'm not going to use that, but I would use a gas card. I would use a grocery card. Something that helps them make ends meet.
Another thing that I would like to introduce in our marketing is that new system we have, our new bookkeeping system that we have internally. That they also provide a service for tenants, like for work orders and that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
For collecting rent, so we could actually have a discount, or we haven't talked about this formally, but off air, but actually provide a discount if they sign up for automatic withdrawal from their bank account. So if we have access to their bank account, have a monthly draw every month, they can pay $600 instead of $650, or offer like a seemingly substantial discount on their end.
That locks them in.
If it locks them in, then we have access to their checking account.
We do that by
No, when you say we have access to their checking account, we don't.
No,
have access.
we don't have access.
That's not the right term.
That's not the right term. Well, we have. How would you say that? We have a draw off their. If they have an automatic payment to us,
like
an automatic payment like we do
same
our other.
day they get the same day they get their check.
That's something that we could explore. That's something I want to explore offline. We have an automatic. They sign up for an automatic payment system to us, and we provide them a discount for their rent. I think that would be because and there are going to be times when it bounces and that kind of thing. You do have situations like that. But 9 times out of 10, the overdraft covers it unless they just have zero money in there. If the overdraft fee, the bank will cover it unless they opted out of the overdraft thing. So that's something that we can start implementing is to do that. And another thing would be to have not only that. Are there legal reasons why we can't accept Visa or MasterCard for rent payments?
I don't know of any. We discussed that the other day. I think we need to look into that. I think it'd be a great thing.
Yeah, because we're accepting legal. We probably something we need to talk to our attorney about. But we accept Visa and MasterCard. I put on the website that we accept it for the deposit and the first month's rent. And we've done that before from someone, but they wrote us a check off of their account a long time ago when we rented. We've actually only done it one time. Amazingly enough, we've only done it one time, but that's something that we could do, and we accept the payments through PayPal. But they offer some kind of discount program where we automatically have that, for lack of a better word, they pay us through their credit card. Like if we have their, just like you make, I don't know if you
automatic
can do that.
payment
Automatic
plan.
payment through credit card, check, draft, whatever. Offer them a discount.
I like that too. It might be nice to have options.
Well, I think that's a great idea. I think that is, but that's a. There needs to be some kind of a. What if they cancel that? I mean, I guess there's got to be some rules around that, and that's details we don't need to discuss right now. But that's a good idea. I think that. I think a lot of these incentives they're not. They just end up costing you money. That's what I think.
But it also costs us money if we have empty units. As we know, empty units cost us money.
I don't think people would rent. I don't think people would choose to rent a place because you're going to give them a $25 discount if they pay by the 1st. I don't think that's what people think. I don't think that's the way it. I don't think. I could be wrong. I wouldn't. I'm speaking for myself, so that's.
I also do we need? I know some landlords. I mean, I know mine did. The last apartment that I lived in, that's been several years. It's been over 10 years ago.
Kind of.
But
kind of.
It's been a long time ago. It's been several years ago. It's been 10 years since I've lived there. But anyway, that's for another time. But they reported it to the credit bureaus. I mean, is that something that we would?
You got to be a member in order to do that, and it costs money, and
it's just not worth it.
Unless we. I don't know any units that we have right now that we would want to run people's credit and disqualify them based on their credit score. If we've got those, you guys can do deals with that.
You know what I would like to do. You know what I would like to do. I mean, I would like to have. There is really no resource, and it could be a local resource for to tell other landlords about bad news tenants. I mean, there's really no database that you can lock in, and I don't know the legal reasons and the legal areas. We'd have to contact our attorneys for that. But there's no database that a landlord can go in and say, okay, this person's bad news. You don't want to rent to them.
We could charge them
blah,
a fee
blah,
to have
blah.
their name removed.
Exactly. Exactly.
All you can do is ask for references.
Right. All you really can do is ask for references, and that's it. There's nothing you can go in and type in and see, oh, this landlord added this person for this reason. And
you can blog this and that on Facebook. I mean, it doesn't really. I don't know how it would be illegal. I mean, if you're reporting facts and reporting truth.
Right.
This person did not pay me rent, called me something, blah blah blah, and left. And they stole the water heater.
Right.
or after they left, I noticed the water heater was missing. You're not saying they stole it, but you're implying it.
Right.
I mean,
why can't we have a database that landlords can access that has that information? Whether, I don't know.
How much would we pay for that?
I would pay money. You could pay like you could pay like $25 to check the database, or. Of course, we're going to be running the database, so it will be ours. So we're not.
So would you pay $25?
I would pay that. I would pay that to.
Maybe we should explore this idea later.
Right.
Later.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's get back to talking about tenants and whether incentives are a good thing or not. Before. Try to buy creatively. We talked about here's option A for this person. Here's option B. Would that be something we could use to our tenants if we have a savvy tenant? I mean, it all goes back to the quality of the person that you bring in.
Right.
Some people are going to, we have some that are going to pay on the first no matter what without an incentive. Bless their hearts. Thank goodness for people like that. But then, like you say, there's going to be people that you could give them $1 rent and they're not going to pay it on time. It's just not going to happen. That's not the type of person they are.
We've heard stories like that.
Mm-hmm. So, but like doing something with the credit card and then the bank draft. Let's be flexible and say you seem like a nice person. We want to keep you as a tenant, and you keep us happy. We'll keep you happy. How can we help you pay us on time?
Well, I'll just tell you, in my experience, the way to the way to do this is, I'm okay with charging a fee. It needs to be not a small fee. I think once you pass a threshold, John's got a 5-day threshold, basically. You know, on the 5th day, you're in trouble. So the rent's due on the 1st. You got a 5-day grace period. You have a pretty hefty fee, and I'm thinking in the $50 range. I think $25 is not enough for being between, let's say, 5 and 10 days late. And I think you at least go with the bluff that you're going to evict somebody, that after 10 days, that's it. I think there's got to be you can't just say, like the daycare thing, I think you can't just say, we're going to, I'm going to pay that fee and then I can be late. Even if it's per day. Even if you had $5 per day or $10 per day. That builds and builds and builds and builds and builds. And then they say, well, I'll pay it later. What often happens, the reason people end up paying is you staying on their case. Mm-hmm. That's generally what it is. It's being there, calling them every day. Your rent's due, knocking on their door. They don't want you knocking on their door. They do not want to see you. And that's what usually does it. Because if you let it go, what ends up happening, depending on your tenant, we're only talking about people that can't afford to pay the rent, quite frankly. We're not talking about people that have plenty of money in excess and they can just write a check. But the people that are like that, a lot of times when if you let them go, and this has always been the case, I've always been disappointed. What happens is they build to a point where they say, it's cheaper for me to cut my losses. I'm just going to let this roll. I'm not going to pay it. I'm going to delay until they force me out.
And those are professional tenants.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that are like that because they've experienced it. Now, there are some great tenants, don't get me wrong, but I'm somewhere in the charge them a fee, give them a little bit of grace period, charge them a fee, and then give them a deadline. Because if you say, and there are going to be exceptions to this, trust me, I'm very lenient. It sounds good when I'm not dealing with somebody, but I think in theory you give them, maybe 10 days so that they can get to the 15th. By the 15th, if they've not paid by the 15th, they've had an opportunity, no matter who you work for, whether you get paid twice a month, or every 2 weeks, or no matter what, you've had an opportunity to get a payday by the 15th, if your rent's due on the 1st. So, if you're not priority on that, then you should have been able to get some compensation by the 15th.
And like I said, there's professional tenants where, they know how to work the system. They'll get in there, they'll take advantage of you, and then after, they'll drag it on for 3 or 4 months, and then you don't get a dime out of them.
I think there's more of those out there than you realize. Because
yeah.
I have known people that I've worked with that were just like that. And I would hear this woman's stories and think, my God, how can you do that? How can you live? But her and her boyfriend would literally do that.
Yeah.
They would pack up. After a couple of months, they'd use up their time, and then there's the limit. This is the line, and then they're gone. Leave the place of wreck, and they do it to somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, they're only paying 1 month rent out of 3.
Right.
Over and over and over.
So you have to that's where you have to, in the very beginning, you have to nip it in the butt in the very beginning and screen them and make sure you're not fall victim to those kinds of people, because we've been a victim of those kinds of people. And not only does it cost money for a place to be empty, of course, but it also costs money for someone to go in there and tear it up, and you have to go in there and clean it up and clean up their mess and evict
that's
them.
Not cheap.
And lost revenue from having to evict them. So, we've gotten you can't be so desperate where you end up getting someone in there. They might pay a month. Yeah, we could get someone some of our properties. They might be. We can turn them over just like that. But you put someone in there that's going to leave in a month or two, leave it a wreck, and then drag it through the system for 3 or 4 months, and then it's more headache than it's worth. So that's why you kind of screen it from the beginning and do it right the first time.
But I do like the idea of giving them a little discount if they pay by credit card or if they pay like a automatic bank withdrawal.
Well, we don't give them a discount if they pay by credit card. That's a convenience for them, and it's a charge for us.
Yeah.
Remember, you're going to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 to 5%.
Right. Well, anything to get their money in. Plus, I mean, it's not great, but it's still a tax deduction. You can deduct those fees.
Well, but that even the tax deduction means that a third of a third is all you're deducting. You know, if you're getting, there's still a cost involved even with a deduction, and I don't think we should give people a discount for paying through a means that would cost you money. I think that unless you had an automatic thing, I believe in doing the automatic thing in order to reduce the chance that you're going to have to do collections, because collections cost money and time.
But sometimes you eat those fees. I'm of the opinion that yes, it does cost money, but like you're saying, your opportunity costs too. And sometimes
why not take it by check? Give them I mean,
if you trust that it's not going to bounce. I mean, you mean like a handwritten
well,
check?
Well, then you realize that credit cards, you can dispute a credit card charge as well.
Well, I know. I've done it. I understand that.
So there's no way to by the way, there's no better method to get your money back than somebody write you a check. There's no better credit card dispute. You're just out of it. I mean, it's something that you can easily lose. If somebody writes you a check, that's against the law to write a check that's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And what you can take that to the magistrate, and that is cash. Because they will collect for you. They will collect for you on bad checks.
Right, and it's a credit card transaction. They can dispute it up for a year past. So that's true. Like if you did take credit cards for rent, that's why maybe they don't do it.
That may be a reason not to do it. I don't know.
They can go back several months and say, "Hey, I never agree." You know, whatever the reason, and they reverse the charges back. However many months they can go back. So that might be something to think about. You know, even with the first month's deposit and the rent. But the way we do it, it's more difficult. We're not doing like a straight through. We're using a go-between PayPal, and it's much more difficult to do that on that. So I don't know.
You think?
From my experience, I don't know. It might not be.
I've never had experience disputing anything on PayPal.
It's not easy.
But remember, you're not doing it through PayPal. You do it through your credit card.
That's what I mean. You would call your credit card issuer, and they have an agreement with PayPal or something that makes it very difficult.
Oh, they do?
You have to actually go through PayPal to dispute it. And, you know, unless it's a physical good, it's very difficult. Like if I just give you money through PayPal, you know, I can't call my credit card company and they'll say, "Oh, you did it through PayPal." Well, you have to go to them and just discuss it with them. PayPal, unless it's a transaction like through where there's a physical good involved, it's very difficult to get it reversed. Like if I just gave you money, I gave you $50 through PayPal, and then I said I didn't do that, or I decided I didn't want to give it to you, or I was whatever. It can't get it reversed easily. So we can't have any dead
Donnie,
time.
do you have any thoughts? You've been awful quiet.
Oh gosh, I was just kind of thinking thinking when I was a tenant, I must have been a pretty good tenant. I never had these issues with not having the rent to pay. But
that's shaking again, Bob.
I'm sorry?
It was shaking.
I know. I was just fixing it.
When I wonder what the threshold is, what the if there if there's a money amount or something that I wonder if people that have higher end properties that they rent have any less problem collecting rent than we do.
Almost guaranteed. Almost guaranteed.
Almost guaranteed that they.
They have,
Have
less
fewer
problems.
Issues with collecting rent.
Well, that goes back to maybe the quality of tenant. Like
And I wonder what the cutoff. I wonder where the. I wonder where you how you, if there's a how you figure out when you're if this where the cutoff is when you start finding. I don't
I don't
know.
know. We
Plus-
need to figure that out.
Those properties are also really desirable, you know, so that person can be a little bit more choosy. Like
Right.
where-
By the way, we're in the chat room if anybody wants to
Like-
pose a question or make a comment.
Where I lived before, it was very close to a large park in town. It was right on the park, a highly desirable place, and I felt lucky to get that place to begin with. I mean, it was sought after, and I think she had other people looking at it, but I got it. And I am sure that if I defaulted and she kicked me out, she could have somebody in immediately. I never saw her places empty for very long. Only they were empty for her to clean and paint, and then somebody was in, and they were paying good rent, usually a little bit higher than the previous person.
Yeah.
You know, so this landlady had it going on, but that property was highly desirable. People wanted to live there. You know, she wasn't begging anybody to move in.
No, that's the position you want to be in too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it looks like we are at the 30-minute mark. So we beat this dead horse. You think we want to wrap it up?
No, I don't think we really talked about what we were talking about. I don't think we
Training
talked-
tenants.
Training tenants.
We kind of jumped
You
Yeah,
in.
have
we
to
were
train
talking about
them the minute they walk.
incentivize.
The minute you meet them, you have to start training them. You have to let them know how strict you are, how unreasonable you are. You have to let them know from the very beginning. You can't be you can't be you can't sell it. You can't sell the property or the house or the apartment and like you're begging them to move in. You have to let them know your policies from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to, because if not, if they see an ounce of weakness or vulnerability, they're going to take advantage of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it starts the minute the minute they walk in the door, and maybe that's why we're having problems with one of our properties because I don't know. I mean, because I used to say, "Oh, we'll do anything to get you in here, whatever," but no, it doesn't work that way.
What else? What else are you going to train them about? One of the things that you discussed prior to was about somebody mentioned about being the police officer, about
Yeah.
when to call.
You have to let them know, when not to call you, when it's appropriate to call you, when it's not appropriate to call you. I have found over my course of being a landlord that I have also played the role of social worker, and so I was being a social worker instead of a
What does that mean?
instead of a landlord. Well, they would call me if they had a dispute with their neighbor, whether it be in the building that they were living in, or the next door neighbor house or whatever in the neighborhood. They would call me with the dispute that they had. There's something that I couldn't do anything about. I mean, they need to call the police, not call me.
Yeah. What do you do with a tenant that says the tenant next door is using drugs?
Yeah, what do you do about that?
How do you handle that?
The police can't even do it. I mean, the police, just can't say, okay, you're using drugs, you're out of here.
Well, one thing is I encourage people to contact the police. If nothing else, it's good for the police to know that, even if they can't do anything, they know that this person, and they can be on lookout for them. So I always encourage, if somebody's doing something illegal, they need to do that. That goes back to the inspection requirement. I think that we need to be more aggressive with that if we are going to if we encounter that. It's difficult, but I think that we need to be aggressive and do an inspection And if we see something that looks like it is, I think we need to consider taking them to court and filing for eviction.
I know every lease I've ever signed said that one of the ways that they would consider it a breach of the release if I did something illegal on their premises.
Yeah, and that's going to be hard to dispute. But I would think that people, you got two kinds of people. One person would be totally embarrassed and would not want to show up, would say, hey, I'm getting out, I'm moving. And then you got these people that are part of the system, they've been in and out of jail, and that happens. I mean, even people that you wouldn't suspect. And those people will sit in line and take you to court, and go with you to court and say, well, I wasn't using drugs. He didn't see me using drugs. There was no drugs there. He just wants to get rid of me. There's those kinds of people. I think you still do it, but I think it's.
Can you legally, like, if the neighbor says they're using drugs next door?
I don't think that's how you do it. I would never take somebody's word.
How do you prove that they're using drugs?
I don't know that you have to.
You don't even have to. You don't have to
just
prove
call
it.
We're not the police.
Well, I think you call the police. But here's what I think: the tenant needs to call the police. You don't call the police because you didn't witness it. You didn't witness it,
and they're going to drag you into the whole mess.
And maybe that I've tried very hard to stay out of that kind of stuff, and I think I've made some mistakes by not being more aggressive. And I guess I was thinking, well, if they're not hurting you, if they're not doing it outside, if it's not visible, I've thought that kind of thing. But the more experience I get, the more I think that we need to be more proactive. And when somebody reports that, you need to say, hey, we're going to be doing a maintenance inspection, and you look for signs or evidence of drug activity. And if you see some, you probably need to start the eviction process. That's what I think.
Right. So if we see a crack pipe in their bathroom, so we legally can evict them and say, okay, we saw drug paraphernalia in your apartment, you're out of here. That's why I think it's important to have inspections, and how often is what we disagree on. But.
Well, I think it's for cause kind of thing. You might schedule once a year, maybe you do it twice a year, and then you have for cause, which could be maintenance or whatever. I don't think that's with notice. I'm not saying show up banging on somebody's door saying I want in. I don't think that's not a good way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the social worker thing. A lot of times they will call you because they suspect they're doing drugs, or they suspect that their kids are getting beat up, or they're fighting over there, and you think that the kids are being abused, or they need to call the police. I don't need to be running down there because and I've gotten involved in that when we first started, involved in those little squabbles, and have drugged me into it. And now I just say call the police. If you suspect someone's being abused over there, if you suspect there's drug activity, then you need to call the police, not me. I can't do anything until I actually witness it myself. And if the kids are being abused, there's nothing I really can do as a real estate investor anyway.
What would you do?
Yeah, what would you do? Call the police. If there's people out in your front yard, with guns, or stealing or causing mayhem, don't call me. Call the police. They call me. The police stations are across the street.
Yeah, I like 10th Avenue.
10th Avenue. They called me. Yeah, there's people out. Out in the front. You're not in the front yard, but on the sidewalk, and we don't like them being there. Like they want me to come down there and run them.
Kick them off. Yeah.
You need to call the police.
Send your thugs down.
Send my thugs.
Send your employees.
It's not doing it. It's not doing it.
Yeah, it's just delayed.
But it has one of the buttons or something.
No, it's in show mode to show you the features.
One thing that I've as I recall, landlords always asked me to call them if my water was leaking. You know, that's one thing that we had just come up. We had an incident with one of our places where a tenant had not. There was a problem that we wish we would have known about had he called, that he didn't call. It was a plumbing issue that
Right.
could have gotten taken care of and with less expense had we known 3 months earlier or whatever. So there are certain things that you would want them to call you or email you or something.
Yeah, and had we had a monthly inspection on that, which I didn't put that, I don't believe we put that in our lease, but
It's not, but would you have? I'm not sure you'd notice that. I'm not sure how in depth you're going to be doing on your inspections.
I would notice that there was a damage. You would notice there's damage around that toilet because water is a big thing. Water can, if there's water dripping, there's water on the toilet. I mean, it can really
I
damage.
know, but I'm not sure that I would have noticed. That in a casual inspection, maybe depends on how in depth your inspections are going to be.
Well, I mean, I told him I wanted to talk to him about it, and I haven't talked to him about it yet. But I told him I wanted to. But well, I don't know. I mean, how in depth do they need to be? I mean, I think I would have noticed something like that. I mean, there's.
I think you wouldn't have. That's my point.
It was pretty significant, but it's been fixed, so I don't know. What was the other? Oh, you had something else. The other issue, or
I think
social worker
Yeah,
thing?
I think about you don't want. I think you said something. I think that's important. Is that the relationship starts when they first get in the door, and,
Right.
and that you're not going to be their friend. You're not their friend. You're not there to make their life easier. You're there to provide one service, and that's to rent them a place. And
Right.
that's your relationship, is that you have this business relationship with them. Certainly you wouldn't want to be socializing with your tenants or something like that.
Right.
I wonder how people draw that line when they have a duplex. They have to be prepared.
You mean when they live in one?
When they live in one and rent the other,
I would think that would be
That
difficult.
would be hard.
you would have to right from the beginning.
I think that's
Not be a social.
that's about tenant selection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we've known people to be in that situation, but I don't know. It's big in like big cities, like in Boston, wasn't it, Bob? Where people would own like a fourplex, like a building that had 4 or 5 units in it, or 3, and they'd live in one because it's so expensive there to live. And then they would lease out the other ones. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to hear someone's opinion on that. But basically, you don't want to be there. You want to let them know you mean business from the minute you show them the property. You want to let them know that you're not a social worker. You want to let them know your requirements and your demands at the very beginning, and let them know that you're not. That they're not. A lot of these professional tenants just go around shopping for easy landlords, and so you want to let them know that you're not an easy landlord. So we've been on the air. How many minutes now?
45 minutes.
About 45 minutes. After commercials and all that,
It's an hour.
that's an hour. Hope everyone's enjoying our sponsors.
Okay.
Not John Racing. So, done?
Well, I think
Wrapping
we're
up
done
today?
because we can't have a lot of dead air.
Okay.
It costs us money.
We have dead air now. So, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks for joining us. We'll have a new topic next week.
What are we talking about next week? We can
I guess we could
go over that for a minute. I know everyone's waiting anxiously for that.
The schedule for next week. The differences in multi-units and single-family homes, a management perspective. That's a good topic.
Yeah, that's a real good topic. That'll be a good one. And it's a management's perspective, not an investor's perspective. So, well, I'd like to talk about the investor's perspective at one point too, but next week will be a good one.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Everyone enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Peace out.
Assalamu alaikum. Practicing my Arabic.
Yeah.
Thank you once again for joining us here on landlordsjournal.com. You can catch our schedule of our podcast on the schedule tab of our website, landlordsjournal.com. Also be on the lookout for featured guests and our call-in feature that we will be instituting here in the next few weeks. Again, this was a show that was previously recorded on November the 7th, 2010. You can always catch us on our website at landlordsjournal.com. Until next week, have a nice week. Bye-bye.